Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We'll give a few moments for some other folks to join if they're just starting to log on, but thank you to everyone who's chosen to spend their lunch hours or whatever hour it may be, depending on where you're calling in from. I'm really excited to speak today about our newest funding program, the Ignite program. We'll be going through a lot of hopefully the questions that some of you have sent in and some of the questions that we've been receiving since the program's been open. We are close to the end of the application window, and we'll be talking about that, but it's never too late to start that application. We're really looking forward to reading through and getting back to those of you and working with a lot of the ones who have submitted already. So we'll give just a few more moments and then we'll dive into the webinar. And just a couple of housekeeping items that I can touch on. You can use the Q&A function to submit any questions that you have. We'll also be sharing our general query email address, so you can just send an email anytime to ignite@cabhi.com. If your question's a little bit more specific to your own situation or your own application, we encourage you to use that email, and we'll be able to get back to you generally within 24 hours. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We have a recording in progress for the webinar as well, so we'll be able to post this, and you can rewatch it should you choose to. And so, without further ado, let's dive in. So, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Today, we're talking about the Ignite program. This is our newest funding program as an organization. So, those of you who have been following CABHI for a little while, this is a new program that we feel really fills an important gap in the market and what we've seen, the needs of innovators, researchers, anyone with early stage solutions. It's really difficult to find the funding and the support at that early stage to move the needle on your innovation, to get it to that stage where it can be further invested in or further validated or further scaled across a wider audience to reach that target audience that you're trying to impact. So that's what the Ignite program was built around. We'll talk a little bit more about that. First, just want to introduce you to the Ignite team. And so there's obviously a large team working behind the scenes on the program, and all kind of us coming together to support the program. But if you're speaking to someone about Ignite, it's probably one of myself or my colleague Tyler. We are both working on the program, and so we'll be answering a lot of the questions throughout the course of the application process and reviewing the applications. There's also a larger team behind the scenes that serves us as our review panel. So if you're submitting your application, it will be read by a multitude of experts in the field, industry, research, clinical side. So more than just the two of us, but we're more on the operations side, myself and Tyler. So we'll be answering your questions as we go through the webinar today as well. So just a quick little bit about CABHI for those of you who might not be as familiar with our organization. We started CABHI, or CABHI was started in 2015, and it was the coming together of a number of different levels of government and philanthropy and private sponsors, all with a common understanding of this need to drive the development and adoption of transformative aging and brain health innovations. And so we know that the demographics are shifting, that there's a huge need and opportunity in the space to make impact and to use technology to support older adults to thrive and to live with purpose, fulfillment, and dignity at any age. And so using technology or innovations that aren't technology in order to accomplish that mission is right at the center of what we do. And this is just a little bit of our innovation pipeline and our conceptual model for supporting innovation. We have a number of different funding programs and activities that correspond to these three different areas of design, develop, validate, refine, implement, and scale. Of course, innovation happens kind of in a more of an iterative format than necessarily linear, but this is kind of the way that we look at things. And the Ignite program falls into that design and develop stage where things are earlier in their development cycle. They are, being validated. They're being iterated upon based on end user feedback, based on rapid cycle testing. And it's all about at this stage, connecting older adults, caregivers, innovators, researchers, the whole continuum to make sure that we're getting the best solutions into the hands of people who need them the most. So that's what we do at CABHI. Diving into our actual programs and services, this is a bit of a look at our pipeline and the way that we look at our programs. So the Ignite program being our earliest stage program that supports innovators, whether that's researchers or companies, to develop and test their innovative solutions. And then moving along into our later stage programs, MC Squared, which has been around for a number of years, which is an investment program to support the further validation and growth of companies. And it's very active as an investor in the health tech and age tech space. And then the final stage program of DNA, or our Discover and Adopt program, which is a capacity building program, which is taking mature innovations that solve problems for particular organizations and kind of flipping the script. So it's the organizations themselves in that program, which is kind of unique, identifying pain points and then finding solutions along with CABHI and us supporting the organizations to adopt solutions to address that pain point. And so I go into a little bit of detail on these programs because our kind of objective as a solution accelerator is to be end-to-end in our ability to support innovators. And so there's always an aim to advance things from one program to the next. And so it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with kind of our later stage programs so you see where we're trying to move the Ignite projects into MC Squared and into DNA, because we want them to kind of follow that continuum in order to reach growth and scale, because we've found that that's the kind of direction that a lot of the innovators take, and that's what we see them become most successful through. And kind of in parallel to all of these different programs, we have our acceleration services, which is a series of non-monetary supports that we offer to all projects within our pipeline. Includes things like our coaches community and our innovation network. And so we'll touch on this a little bit later, but we really try to be more than just the funding. We offer supports that are very domain specific in the aging and brain health space, in order to try to make that, best use of the time that you're within our pipeline, to create linkages with trial sites, with distribution channels, mentors, the whole gamut of aging and brain health expertise. And that's really what we bring through our program in addition to the funding. This is just a bit of an illustration to represent the pathway towards positive impact. It takes a number of different stages, and again, the way that we look through our program pipelines, it's a lot of different milestones being checked off within these broader areas within the innovation journey. So we're in that earlier stage with Ignite. We're looking, first we've uncovered a real world problem, and that might be something that you have clinical experience in, or personal experience in, or something that you've understood from an industry perspective to be a real unmet need. And we're working through the different stages of co-design and identifying the critical ingredients of a solution, and working through to get that end user feedback, piloting solutions, and so on. So that's the way that we look at the innovation journey within CABHI. This is a bit of our bragging slide. It's our impact to date. It's serviceable, I guess, to applicants in the way that these are some of the metrics that we're interested in and that we collect. And so it's a good idea to reflect maybe some of these different areas or metrics within your project application. We're always looking to support unique solutions. We're trying to help them achieve greater spread and scale, reaching more people, engaging with more highly qualified personnel. We want them to be able to leverage additional funding. There is a one-to-one matching funding requirement for this particular program, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's obviously something that the more the better, because we want to invest more and more resources into this particular space and to support projects to be as successful as possible. We want to see job creation. We want to see solutions introduced. So these are all the different target areas. It's an incomplete list. There's many other things that we care about as well, but these are some of the metrics that we capture to better understand our impact. And so now let's dive into Ignite. So you can check out our website anytime, cabhi.com/ignite, for kind of a full written out overview of the program, but we'll speak to kind of some of the context between the lines a little bit on this webinar and try to give as much insight. And at the end of this, I'm going to jump over actually to the application itself and just do a quick walkthrough of some of the key questions and what we're really looking for in those particular areas to make sure that you're as successful as possible when you're submitting your application. So let's dive into Ignite. So first, what is it? It's a program for early stage innovations, and that can mean a number of things depending on what type of innovation it obviously is. But we're really looking to support the development and validation of these innovative solutions in the aging and brain health space, so specific to that particular niche or that vertical. It doesn't mean that that needs to be your only market of focus, but that should be a particular, priority area for you is the aging and brain health space, older adults, persons with dementia, their care partners, etc. And so development and validation occurs obviously in an iterative cycle, always doing that build, learn, or build, test, learn cycle. And so it's meant to support that with funding in the range of 50,000 to 150,000, depending on what your needs are, over a 12-month period, all in order to advance the innovation to the next step. And again, whether you're coming from the biotech space or digital health space, that's going to look very different. And so we understand that, and we want you to tell us what those milestones are that would best advance your innovative solution towards impact. And like I mentioned before, this is more than just the funding. We also offer additional support in the form of network access, our acceleration services, and all those things in between to best foster growth and success for the innovative solution. And this is why we've developed the program, kind of in short, is to drive the development of validation, but really making sure that solutions are safe, effective, and impactful, right? This is the stage that we're trying to, reduce the risk of these kinds of innovative solutions for perhaps future investors. We're trying to show that they're safe and effective and that they can be used to meet the particular objectives that they claim. And so it's all about advancing your innovative solution. This dives into a little bit more of the non-monetary supports that we offer. So Ignite will contain a recurring Ignite learning series. And so this is going to be delivered in collaboration with key partners. We're going to have a series of guest speakers and webinars that you'll be able to access all around things like IP and securing investment, perfecting your pitch, understanding the age tech market, all these different kinds of things. And we have a question at the very end of the application where we ask everyone, what are the areas that you would be particularly interested in? And we're actually going to use that question to build a bit more of a custom learning series around the eventual cohort that we select. And so make sure that you're considering that question. I know it's a bit of a lengthy application, but we do want to make sure that the questions at the end, where we're really trying to understand what are the needs of innovators in this particular space, what are the areas where they want to learn more. We want to make this not, a problem to want to attend. We want to make it something that you want to learn and understand more through. So let us know what the areas that you're interested in learning about are. Acceleration service access, so things like being assigned a mentor, KM support, LEAP, which is our end user advisory panels, people who have that actual personal experience living with either issues related to older age or with dementia or caregivers themselves. So that's one thing that we really encourage applicants to do, is to ensure that the end user's voice has been incorporated into the solution, whether that's being done a little bit more informally through customer discovery, or you're looking at bringing on, some sort of end user who's part of your management team or your board of directors, making sure that you have access to that end user voice. And so we provide that during the program, but we expect applicants to have brought that to the table kind of in advance to where you're able to apply from. So networking through other CABHI innovators. So we try to create a bit of a community of innovation within our own cohorts and across our different programs. So we'll have a private Slack channel, project collision days, an event series, all things like that. Participation in our innovation showcase and pitch competition as well. So this is something that's relatively new in this program, is we're going to have the top participants be able to receive further investment directly through the end of the program as a built-in structure of the program. We want to see that pipeline progression. And so at the end of your program, or at the end of the project, if you're successful in applying for Ignite, you'll be able to participate in a pitch competition, and the winners of that will move on to receive additional funding and support. And so it's kind of a built-in mechanism to continue to support the top projects, and that'll be done on a competitive basis. We'll talk more about that for the successful applicants who are in our first cohort. And this is just to give a sense of the program objectives. What are we really trying to accomplish through the program? So we're trying to drive breakthrough innovation and research in aging and brain health. So really thinking about solutions that are not just going to enhance perhaps, aspects of life, but to really change the aging experience, to be transformative and to improve the quality of life in a substantial way for older adults and their care partners. Developing, attracting, and retaining talent in the aging and brain health space, to amplify project impact and knowledge exchange, and to advance high potential projects into the later stage programs, again, is one of the objectives of the program. And then so now let's talk a bit about eligibility. So we have two different streams for the Ignite program, the company stream and the research stream. You are asked at the very beginning of the application to identify which stream you're applying through. There's some additional eligibility criteria listed online, but the main things are that you have to be, as a company, registered federally or provincially in Canada, and that your valuation or valuation cap is less than $4 million at the time of application. And so the reason we have this, and we'll touch on the research stream as well in a second, is we want there to be a clear line between our future programs. And so once you're over that $4 million valuation, then you would move into that MC squared bucket where you'd be looking to apply to our later stage programs. And so Ignite draws the line at $4 million. So if you've raised private capital, if you've got safe agreements, and if you've got that valuation cap set at $4 million or under that, then you would be a good fit for Ignite. And so some of you that won't apply to, but for those of you who it does, that's how we draw the line. On the research side, you must be applying through a Canadian academic institution or a recognized research or healthcare organization. And the applicant themselves must be affiliated formally through the institution or organization that they're applying through. So making sure that they have a faculty position, or they're a practicing clinician or a point of care staff, or someone who's formally affiliated with the organization and is able to commit to conducting the project through the organization who would receive the funds on their behalf. And the final piece is looking at the solution itself that's being put forward through the application must be at a tech readiness level of 6 or below. Again, once you surpass that, you move into our later stage programs. And so there'll be other opportunities for TRL level 7 and above, but this particular program, Ignite, is looking to TRL level 6 or below. And so I'm going to jump over to the priority themes now. And so these are some different ways of looking at aging and brain health that we've determined as kind of our priority areas to address. And so in your application, we ask to speak specifically to one of these and to identify how you address this particular theme in a little bit more detail. And so aging at home, right? So understanding the different complexities of aging in place and remote care, things like that. Caregiver support, this can mean either formal or informal caregivers. How are they supported by your technology or your solution? Caregiver or care coordination and navigation, understanding the different services available to older adults and making sure that you're supporting them to make the best use of those different types of supports. Cognitive and mental health, looking at early detection or diagnostics, different ways of understanding and supporting cognitive health as people experience cognitive decline or dementia. And finally, financial health and wellness. This is always kind of an interesting one because we see companies coming from the fintech space and they're targeting kind of a new product or trying to pivot their product in a way that supports financial planning or end of life planning for older adults to support the way that they're able to make those decisions and understand the complexities of wellness as you age and estate planning and things like that. So it's a really interesting and important area of caregiver support and also support for the older adult themselves, as well as the cross-cutting themes. And so this is a non-mandatory aspect of the application, but we have a few different themes that we encourage applicants to consider how their solution may or may not address these. And we give you space in the application to explain how you do address if you do say that they're relevant to your solution. So diversity, accessibility, and health equity, and promoting social inclusion, preventing stigma and elder abuse. So if your solution addresses one of those, we encourage you to explain. It will only support, but it's not a mandatory component of the application. These are just areas where we do want to further understand the impact of the solutions that are applying. And so just a few notes on what Ignite is not a fit for. And this kind of comes from a number of different questions we've received. And so we want to just call some of these out. This is an incomplete list as well, but we obviously want the program to be as inclusive as possible. But these are just some of the examples of the types of projects which this particular program is not a fit for. And we don't want you to waste your time applying, frankly, but we also want to redirect you to other opportunities, that there are a number of funding opportunities within our knowledge that support these different kinds of things. So companies or research organizations based outside of Canada, this is not for that. Organizations looking to research or test a third-party solution. It's important for the solution that's being put forward in the application to be owned by the applicant themselves and the IP associated with it. Companies with a valuation of over 4 million or any spin-off companies derived from a company with a valuation of over 4 million. We touched on that in the last piece. And innovations without any proof of concept, existing evidence-based or end user engagement. There should be, and we understand this is still at an early stage, but there should be some sort of evidence base for the solution that's being put forward in this particular application. If there's not, if you need to go through and do a little bit of customer discovery or refine the idea by looking at existing evidence, things like that, then we encourage you to do so prior to applying. There's a number of different kind of boot camps and different types of innovation ideation sessions available in other small business incubators to help really refine that idea, because by the time you're applying for Ignite and the funding and all those kinds of things, we expect that there's a good proof of concept and you have a good sense of your product market fit, and that there's been sufficient end user engagement built into that particular idea. So that's a little bit about what it's not for, but you can always send us an email, ignite@cabhi.com, if you're unsure if it's a fit for the program. And so the scorecard for the Ignite program looks a little bit like this. It's 4 different categories. They're weighted all differently. We're really mostly focused on the solution impact and the team qualifications, as well as the market opportunity. The project plan is still a component of this. We obviously want to understand how the solutions are, going to be advanced through the funding and the different types of programs. But we are more interested at this stage in the solution itself and the team behind it, right? So spending most of your application time and the bulk of what you're articulating in your application on those categories is critical. So the solution itself, the degree to which it addresses a critical need in aging and brain health with a focus on dementia, really important to emphasize dementia in your application. That's at the core of what we're focused on as an organization. And so it's important to speak to that specifically. And so solutions that demonstrate the potential to transform the impact on older adults or caregivers will score higher in this particular area. The team qualifications, we want to understand who's behind the project. Obviously, having a diverse set of backgrounds, people with different perspectives and expertise goes a long way to supporting a project. We also really want to understand how you've engaged older adults or end users in this particular category. So making sure to make some reference to that or how you would. The market opportunity, what is the size of the market, the accessibility of the target market, how well defined have you made it? This is not, just a solution for all older adults everywhere, but we've really distilled it down to a particular segment that we're at least going to target first in our product rollout. That's a really critical piece of the application. And then finally, we don't ask for a specific budget in this stage of the application. That will come later. So the program kind of has a 2-stage review process. And so at this stage, you're really telling us all about the solution, the team, the market, and at general levels, kind of the project plan and what do you want to accomplish? What milestones are you looking to achieve through this particular program? But beyond that, we really just want to understand, what are the funds going to be used for in general. We have our eligible expense guidelines listed up online, but we'll be able to work through the minutia and the specifics of these kinds of things. So That's basically the way that the Ignite scorecard breaks down. And a little bit about the process itself. So applications are open for another week. They close at 5 p.m. on December 2nd, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We begin the shortlisted applicant interviews kind of early January. So we'll let you know early in the new year if you've been shortlisted. And then we'll begin that applicant interview process where we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into the solution itself, the team behind it, and then ultimately kind of getting more into what do you want to do with this funding and what can we help you achieve in that 12-month period. Awardees will be notified late January, and then the project will start March 1st, 2025, and run for 12 months until end of February 2026. So that's a little bit about the process. And now I'm just going to flip over quickly to the application form, and then we'll get to questions very shortly. So looking at the application form itself, it looks lengthy and it looks fairly daunting, but a lot of these questions are just checkboxes or names or addresses. So we encourage you not to be thrown off by the number of questions. A lot of these things will also likely be questions that you have the answer to saved somewhere on your hard drives and that you've answered before, and that it wouldn't be generating new text for the sake of the application. So answering first which stream that you're applying to, whether you're a company, venture, research organization, the name of the organization, all these kinds of things, which just give us a sense of who's applying. Getting into the innovative solution, right? And so this is that big segment of the application scorecard, the solution name, the problem that it solves, how is it being solved currently? This is really important, right? What is the current state of how this is being addressed? Don't tell us that nothing out there exists, anything like this, because that's not true. Even if there's nothing like your current solution, there's something that people are using to solve that problem. And so it's important to reference the current standard of care or the current state of practice and why this is improving upon that and why that has been insufficient to this point. How does it work? What are its key features? We will have technical experts reviewing this, but we encourage you to keep the language fairly simple so that people reviewing this from all different perspectives, whether they're coming from the end user perspective or from the technology perspective, are able to make good sense of what you're proposing and how it actually works. Selecting a priority theme, right? And so you may address multiple themes, you likely do, because there's some good crossover between these different themes, but select the one that you feel is the most in the crosshairs of your solution. You can read up a little bit more on our priority themes by clicking here and making sure that you make specific reference to dementia within how you address this particular challenge. Again, I emphasize this a number of times because it is very important. It's at the center of what we do, and dementia is relevant to all 5 of these different categories. And then we ask you whether you address one of the cross-cutting themes. Again, not specifically mandatory to be considered for the opportunity, but it does help if you are addressing one of these particular cross-cutting themes to identify how specifically, and then to give us a bit of a sense of how it addresses that theme. This is an opportunity here, a couple of attachment slots to include any end user engagement, existing evidence, or test data. That could look very different depending on what you're proposing, but feel free to use these attachment boxes as you see fit. The tech readiness level. So again, if you're on the research side, this is tech readiness level 6 or below to be considered eligible, but you can also explain to us, kind of what your rationale is for how you've evaluated this, and just to familiarize yourselves with the tech readiness levels is a good idea to be able to understand where you fit. Speaking to the IP and any certifications, impact, all these kinds of things within that section. And then we jump to the team side of things. So just getting a breakdown of your team. Why are you uniquely positioned to solve this problem? Technical backgrounds, any of the major milestones that you've achieved in the past year. This is all just giving a sense of, what is the team like? How long have they been working on this? What types of expertise do they have access to? And so boards of directors, advisors, things like that. But then this is a really critical piece too, and it's not a trick question. What skills or areas of expertise might you be missing? This is where we really get a sense of how we can be helpful. And it's kind of like, what are your weaknesses in a job interview question, but it's really more for us to understand, can we be of good support here ourselves? We have a lot of internal capabilities and skills and access to groups of mentors and network partners who can fill in some of these areas of expertise. So it's not a trap, not a trick question. We should all have areas of expertise that we're wanting to build, and so we encourage you to be as forthcoming as you see fit with this particular area, so we can understand how we can best support you. Diving in then to the market opportunity. These are your standard questions. Even if you're coming from the research side and you maybe aren't planning on being the one to commercialize this IP, you're looking to develop it to a particular stage and then to license it, these should be questions that you are still considering, right? There has to still be a target market. You have to have a sense of how big that market's going to be. And then we ask around the current users, active users, any revenues that's been generated at this point. These are not mandatory to have answers to. It could be zero, but it's just giving us a sense and painting the picture. It's an important point that not every question is something that we're scoring from a scale of 1 to 10. A lot of them are just context, and it's just helpful for us to understand what stage the project is at and the solution itself. Diving into the funding, and then we're looking at what type of support has been leveraged towards the solution already. And then this part's really key right here, right? So CABHI engagement, what are you requesting from CABHI? So up to $150,000. And then what do you want to achieve with that? So just, in a relatively short amount of space, just explaining, what are those key milestones? We'll have an opportunity to work through what those milestones should be at the later stage, at the interview stage, and to talk about that over the contracting period as well. But in general, what are you looking to accomplish? Why is that relevant? How will that advance the innovation, in your particular case? Besides the funding, what other supports are you most interested in receiving from CABHI? It ties in a little bit to the previous question around areas of expertise. What else can we provide as an organization that's fairly well ingrained in the aging and brain health space? What are the supports and services that you'd be interested in accessing from us or our partnership network? Then there's just another couple of areas where you can upload your files. This is the part where we're kind of building that Ignite learning series. So make sure that you're talking about the areas where you'd be interested in obtaining new knowledge, skills, and expertise. And that's pretty much it. That's the program application. Again, we're doing phase 1 through the online application form, but you'll have a chance to actually speak with our team and to ask any questions, and we'll be able to clarify some things that are unclear if you're shortlisted in the new year when we do our interview process. So flipping quickly back over to the presentation deck, and then we'll dive into some questions. And so we've got a number of questions that have been put through the chat already, and I'll try to get to as many as possible. And anything that we don't get to, or anything that's more specific to your own particular circumstance, please send a question if it's about CABHI in general to info@cabhi.com, or if it's about the program, you can send that to ignite@cabhi.com. And we thank everybody who's joined so far. And so please do submit your questions, and we'll dive into some of those right now. So I'm getting a question here. So guidelines around projects based outside of Ontario, but inside Canada. Can you give an idea of what % of other supported projects are from outside Ontario? So great question. We are Canadian-wide. We do not have a particular quota for Ontario versus outside of Ontario. We're really looking for the best solutions. That having been said, regional representation is incredibly important for us. And so we want to make sure that we're supporting a cohort that doesn't just address priority challenges in one particular jurisdiction, but we're looking to support projects from all across Canada. To give a sense, in the past, I think we've had something like maybe 40%, I think in a past program, so not Ignite, but other programs, around 40% maybe have been within Canada or within Ontario, and then 60% coming from outside of Ontario. We want to see, fairly close representation based on population, based on need. So we don't have a particular way of looking at that, but that having been said, they won't all be from one jurisdiction or another. We want to make sure that we've got representation across Canada. And so all Canadian eligible organizations, companies are going to be considered for this call. So another question, as a US-based company, can we incorporate in Canada after we're selected for the program? these are kind of the questions we can talk about a little bit more on a one-to-one basis, but the important piece is that you're not just incorporating in Canada to have the eligibility met for the particular program, that this is a market that's on your rollout, that this is something that you're considering moving into the Canadian space, and why, beyond just meeting the criteria of the program. If that's the case, and if you're looking to create a Canadian footprint and hire within Canada and to serve the Canadian market, then you would be likely eligible, but it's kind of dependent on probably a follow-up conversation. So we'd encourage you to maybe check in with us through the Ignite question email. So another question, budget submission. There's no dedicated budget module in the application process. Should we upload our budget and justification, or is this the correct procedure? So yeah, there is no specific budget question within the application. And so we plan to address the budget a little bit more in the later stages of the program. We do want, within the context of the question around, what are you looking to accomplish with the funding? What milestones are you looking to hit? That should speak to some of the budget elements, but we really at this stage want to understand more at a high level, the solution you're putting forward, the team behind it, and what you're looking to do generally. And then the budget will work with you to complete that as we go on towards the end of the application process. So if you have a budget put together, great, you can submit that. Give us a better sense of what the particular goals and the different areas where you're allocating funds are going to be, but that's not necessarily required for the particular stage of this program at this stage. CVs and signatures from the research members of the research office. That's another good question. Not necessarily required, but we do ask in the team section just to give some sense of the team's qualifications and background. So whether you think that that's best done by uploading your CVs or resumes versus just including that in a short blurb within the team application section. We'll leave that up to you, but we do want to just get to know generally the team background and expertise and experience. So not a hard requirement to have the CVs or the resumes. We may request that information at a later time, depending again kind of on the nature of the application, but that's a good question as well. Looking at a question around priority themes. So financial health and wellness. Financial health and wellness, is this two separate things, meaning financial health and separately wellness, like well-being or happiness in general? So good question. It's related to financial health and financial wellness. So it's kind of two separate things within the umbrella of financial health and wellness. So maybe phrased a little bit confusingly, but general wellness solutions we're not necessarily considering for this particular program unless they have a specific relation to aging and brain health or dementia. So good question there. It's one kind of topic. Limitation in terms of the number of co-investigators. Is there a limitation there? Not specifically, not in a formal sense. I think it's helpful to confine your team to a group of maybe 3 to 4 members maximum, just so we understand kind of the core team that's working on that. And I think beyond that, it can get a little bit difficult to evaluate the team. So I encourage you to be a little bit more selective in who is considered to be a core part of the leadership group for the application, but there's no set limit necessarily on the number of people that can be involved in perhaps a steering committee or things like that. Question, representing a hospital, the solution is a care initiative reducing fall-related readmission in people with cognitive impairment. We do not have an industry partner. Do we qualify? Based on that, yes, it would sound like you would qualify. I think it's not a requirement if that's the basis of your question to have an industry partner. In fact, it's beneficial if you don't. If it's a third-party IP, it would not be eligible for being considered for Ignite. So if you're developing your own in-house IP, if this is a novel solution that's proprietary to the organization that's applying, then that would be yes, eligible application. So yeah, just other questions. We'll get through a few more of these, and then I think anything else that's not been answered, we'll encourage you to send us an email and we'll follow up. Spots related to evidence and 3 spots for additional files. Are we allowed additional files or evidence? Is it limited to the upload spots? I would try to be selective. I mean, frankly, I'll give kind of two answers. One is you could include within your, one Dropbox file, a longer piece of evidence or a longer, perhaps a link even to a Dropbox itself, um, to include more information if you think that's necessary. But I'd say at the stage that we're at, be more selective in terms of what's being uploaded. Our reviewers are going to want to get a good sense of the project and the evidence base that it has, but they're not going to want to read 300 different white papers in order to get a sense of that. So it's kind of, a suggestion of the amount of different pieces of supplementary application material to be included, but I would be a little bit more selective. If you feel like there's one or two more that you want to include, maybe you can find a creative way to link that within the application itself, but just considering the reviewers' times and things like that. So can the co-investigators be a senior scientist in the US? So yes, you can have members of your team who do come from, other jurisdictions outside of Canada. It's just important for the actual team that's applying that would own the IP as a result of the application to be Canadian based. It sounds like that might be a little bit more of a specific case, but as long as the organization that's applying is Canadian and based in Canada, then you should be able to find a way to make that eligible. But that's pretty much what we're looking at. How many applications typically accepted for the cohort? So it is our first time running the cohort, but we anticipate somewhere in the 12 to 16 applications will be accepted, depending on the funding request for this particular program. So depends a little bit more on, what types of funding requests are coming through with these applications, but 12 to 16 is kind of what our projections are saying. So in and around there. So we don't have a sense of how many applications we'll receive at this stage, but that's just to give a bit of a sense of what we've earmarked as being the amount that we'll end up accepting into our first cohort. So yeah, last question I'll take, and then I think we'll take the other ones offline. So thanks, guys, for this a very active Q&A session, and I'm appreciative of all these questions. Can you please speak more about the scope or depth of pilot testing, or what would be considered a minimum amount of end user feedback you would want to see at this stage? So it's a good question. I think that falls more into an evaluation question rather than an eligibility question. So in order to be eligible for the call, I think we would just want to see something to say that you've done some general proof of concept testing, you've spoken to a group of people affected by the problem that you're addressing. You've got some at least anecdotal evidence that you've put forward, and you understand the problem from both a theoretical as well as understanding it from a personal and impact standpoint. And that would put you forward to the evaluation stage. And then I'd say at that stage, the more rich the data that you're basing this solution off of, the better. It doesn't have to have a basis of, primary research behind it at this stage, but pulling on a number of different resources that indicate that the team really understands the way that people experience this problem is something that will be evaluated kind of on a scale of 1 to 10, right? So 10 being that there's a really deep evidence base and understanding of the problem that comes from both personal anecdote and individuals that they've interviewed perhaps and understood, or members of the advisory committee or the steering committee or the board of directors perhaps for the project team, that those are all included, that those voices are all reflected in the solution itself, rather than just kind of some anecdotal conversations or knowledge of the solution from passing conversation or understanding. So it's a little bit more of a spectrum, but what we're really looking for is a deep understanding and the time that's being taken to unpack this problem and how it impacts people in real world. So I'm going to pause it there and say thanks everyone for submitting your questions. We wish you best of luck in submitting your applications. Please do send us any final follow-up questions in supporting your application over the last 7 days. We're happy to answer anything that comes to mind. And yeah, we look forward to reviewing your applications. And thanks so much for joining the webinar today.